Welcome into Miami Dolphins today here on Chat Sports. I am your host, RC Maxfield, and they have finally put on the pads. It feels like football season has officially started. You know, you see those guys out there in the red jerseys and maybe just the shorts. But hey, now they got pads on and you see some physicality, and that is exactly what you want to see. And I mentioned red jerseys. Well, there is still a guy in a red jersey, and that's Tua Tagovailoa, as he has still impressed in camp. Started out really, really hot, and he's kept it up as he's been noticeably improved on his footwork and throwing deep as a focal point. He has done vast improvements on his game. You think what Tua did last year when he took over for Ryan Fitzpatrick as the starter, it was a lot of dink and dunk. That's not the case anymore, at least so far in camp with Tua, as he has had multiple highlights of deep shots to Albert Wilson and others in that wide receiving core. And Brian Flores, he took notice. He went on to say, if it's open, take a shot. We're going to make them if we don't throw them. So for me, when you look at what Tua has done, this is exactly what you want to see. You want your coach to have confidence in you. And last year, I just don't know if they had that in Tua because of him coming off of that injury, as well as him kind of be throwing in at a weird time. You think about it, the Miami Dolphins were in a very good spot with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it kind of caused this weird dynamic, at least externally. Obviously, in the building between Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick, it was great, but maybe they didn't open up the offense enough for Tua. That's not the case anymore with these weapons now that they have brought in. And Will Fuller, you got Jalen Waddle, and Albert Wilson's back now too as well. But the key thing to keep Tua upright, that's going to be the main issue as you look at the offensive line. And there's some holes and finagling around that offensive line. You use a second-round pick to get a right tackle, presumably, and you also move Hunt in to a guard spot. And that's going to be the guy that I'm watching on that offensive line is going to be Hunt. I mean, you move him into a guard spot, and now you want to see if he can be physical. Played outside last year, presumably the starting right guard for the Dolphins going into the season now. Been a little bit physical when it comes to those videos you see circulating on social media, but I want to see how that actually works out on the right side for the Dolphins. So, Tua's been the talk, and you think about what he's done so far. You look at those numbers we got on the screen right now. In 2020, he had 11 TDs, 5 interceptions, and about just over 1,800 yards and a completion percentage just above 64%. You think about what he did last year as a starter. Again, a lot of dink and dunk. Myles Gaskin was one of his best friends, as well as Mike Gesicki. They improved that offensive repertoire, with Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller. You haven't gotten to see Will Fuller out there yet, but you like the weapons that he has, and now he's going deep early and often in training camp. That is something you want to see if you're a Miami Dolphins fan. Now, give me your one word for Tua expectations this season. I'm telling you what, it feels like everybody's buying in hot and heavy right now. You think about where Tua was just a couple of years ago as a Trevor Lawrence type of quarterback, obviously got injured, had that hip injury, and now he's back fully healthy with the best weapons he's had, obviously, in his whole career, albeit only in one season. When you think about that one word for me, that one word is breakout. I think that this is a perfect setup for Tua Tagovailoa in terms of they put the weapons there. They have the offensive line in place in terms of those key pieces, left and right tackle. You move Hunt into right guard, who I think is going to be a lot better as a guard. Now you have a very, very good core for Tua Tagovailoa to grow around, and also those weapons on the outside are vastly improved, which will allow him to have a greater chance to break out and maybe even get in that MVP conversation. Got to thank the sponsor of today's video, BetUS. They have the best deposit bonus going on in the game right now, 125% deposit bonus. When you go over to chatsports.com/bet and use the promo code Dolphins125. Again, promo code Dolphins125. And what does that exactly mean? You go over there and let's say you deposit $100, because let's be honest, you're going to bet on football this season. Why not do it on BetUS? You think about it, you put $100 in there, they're going to give you $125 to use on the site this season. I mean, absolutely phenomenal deal right here. Again, go to chatsports.com/bet, use the promo code Dolphins125, and you will get an additional $125 to use on the site if you deposit $100. Now, if you don't, you get 125% of whatever you put on the site. Now, here are some of my favorite bets over on BetUS. And again, they're all Dolphins related. What else would they be, right? That AFC East bet, that seems pretty fun to me. right there. I think that that's actually a possibility. You risk $10 and you could possibly win 300. Again, the Bills are obviously the favorite, but what's to say that Tua can't take that leap and potentially be that guy that has the Josh Allen type of rise to the MVP conversation? I don't know. I think that that actually is a pretty good bet right there. That's one I'm definitely watching. Win the AFC. This one's a little bit more of a long shot for sure, no doubt. But when you look at it, again, you have a lot of key pieces on the defense. You have a lot of key pieces on the offense that's vastly improving with Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle. You put capital into it, and now you have a chance to go out and compete in a division that really only has two teams, in my opinion, because the Patriots are not going to be fooling anybody, especially if Mac Jones starts. And then the Super Bowl champs. Why the hell not, right? Let's bring one back to Miami. Producer Jeremy agrees with me. He's nodding his head right now. Bring one back to Miami. Let's get to a time started hot and heavy right now as they can win the Super Bowl. And why don't you bet on it at BetUS and go over to chatsports.com/bet and use that promo code Dolphins125. Albert Wilson. Who would have thought we'd be talking about this name right now after all the injuries and COVID stuff going on with him? He has been an early camp standout as he opted out of the 2020 season. Was on the roster bubble before camp, but he has been absolutely electric so far in camp, connecting with Tua on multiple long, deep passes and just been absolutely explosive so far. And now you think about it, with all these injuries that are happening in the wide receiver core, I mean, he might not be on the roster bubble anymore. And Albert Wilson went on to say this about his health, which has been a big question for him in his career. I feel pretty good. I feel explosive. I feel fast. I'm just going out here to work again. It's just a blessing being able to go out here. Time heals all. Just being able to have that time off to be able to rest that hip and rest everything else. That's pretty much it. Anything that is banged up, it has a limit. When you're healthy, that limit is pushed a little further. So that's how I feel right now, not having a limit. And the last time we saw Albert Wilson was in 2019, and he started off pretty good. And then he obviously did get that injury. He had 43 catches, 351 yards, as well as 1 TD. And he was kind of that security blanket, short intermediate guy. And you wonder, now that you have a Jalen Waddle, is that going to be the same case? And you look at the health of the wide receivers currently on the Miami Dolphins. Devontae Parker obviously came back to camp and was off the PUP list earlier this week. He will be the wide receiver one, at least presumably. Haven't seen Will Fuller yet. Jalen Waddle is coming back, obviously, from that ankle injury that he played last year in the national championship game. But now you have Williams as well. You have Jakeem Grant, Wilson. You have a lot of guys on this roster, but Albert Wilson is that guy to me that I think makes a lot of sense to keep. You think about it, Jalen Waddle has struggled with injuries and at least is coming back from that ankle injury and hasn't been 100% in a while. Well, Albert Wilson can be that guy to fill in and be that short intermediate guy that's just, hey, a security blanket, quote unquote, for Tua. And so I think that now that he's healthy, you've seen what he's done in limited time. He's not going to be that explosive guy. I mean, maybe he will be after what we've seen in training camp so far, but his bread and butter is in that, 7 to 14 yard range, just dink and dunk down the field and make sure he makes the catch, and maybe he can make somebody miss. I got a question for you, though. Let us know. Does Albert Wilson win the wide receiver 4 spot? Type Y for yes, N for no. I'll be honest with you guys. Right now, I think it's possible. I think it really is. And really it comes down to Preston Williams. He hasn't proven to anybody that he can stay healthy. Remember, he's missed half of each of his first 2 seasons. And now I get it. Albert Wilson is coming back from a pretty substantial injury to his hip. But I do think that Albert Wilson can be that guy that just helps Tua in the middle of the field and allows him to dink and dunk and have that trustworthy wide receiver in the intermediate routes. Speaking of wide receiver, Jakeem Grant. But we're going to switch on over to the main returner. Well, I mean, I know this sounds like a no-brainer. I get it. He was an all-pro second-teamer last year when it comes to returning, but he's impressed early on in camp again, and he's taken more wide receiver reps due to those injuries that I just mentioned to Albert Wilson in terms of why he's getting reps as well. He will continue to be an impact returner, but I did think it was interesting that the comments that Brian Flores had pertaining to Jakeem Grant earlier today in his press conference, and he said this about the elite return man. I think there's a lot of value in an explosive returner that can flip the field position and score. Jakeem, obviously very explosive, obviously productive, not only as a returner, but as a receiver as well. We're happy to have him. And again, I'm not trying to start anything. I think Jakeem Grant is that main returner, but I do think it's interesting that you have a lot of options. You think about it. You have Bowden now. You have Waddle. You have other guys that have experience, at least at the collegiate level or even in the pro level as well, as a main returner for their respective teams. Obviously, Jakeem Grant is that guy for the Miami Dolphins, but I wonder if they use him at the wide receiver a little bit more, at the wide receiver position a little bit more, if those wide receivers don't get healthy and you see him more there, and maybe that gives opportunities to others in the return game. Now, top returner in 2021, again, I think it is Jakeem Grant, but I want to hear from you. Type JG down in the comments, or NI, JW, LB, whoever you think it's going to be. I think realistically, of those four options that we have up there, Jakeem Grant is obviously the one. The other one that I'm really interested in seeing is Lynn Bowden. Remember, he came over from the Raiders last year. I wonder if he could get a little bit more time out there. But Jalen Waddle just seems like the capital you put into him. I'm not risking that with his ankle. Just, hey, be on the field for offense specifically, nothing else. Let's get out there and just be productive. Be that elusive guy you are when it comes to being the wide receiver. And obviously, he was a top 10 draft pick as well. Transitioning over to the defense, Van Ginkel injury update here. He left during the first padded practice on Tuesday. The injury has not been disclosed, but he was seen leaving practice with a limp. Now, what does this mean? Obviously, we're going to see the depth chart here in just a minute when it comes to the Miami Dolphins, but Van Ginkel is one of those key guys in terms of rotation piece, and even more than that sometimes. When you look at his stats, he was a very impactful guy for the Miami Dolphins last year on that defensive side. This is what Flores had to say about the Van Ginkel injury. He's day-to-day. He's already in training camp rehabbing, and he's just going to take it one day at a time and get back as soon as he can. Now, looking at the Dolphins depth chart, as I mentioned just a minute ago, those are the guys that are going to start up top. Agba, you got McKinney, you got Baker, and you got Phillips, right? You use the capital in Phillips. He is going to start on the outside as long as he is healthy. Now, Van Ginkel, what I love about him is he's versatile. He can go to either side. He can play in the middle a little bit. Obviously, that's not his main position, but you love his versatility when it comes to the linebacking position. And again, McKinney's coming off an injury as well. We know what Baker brings to the table. I want to see a little bit more of Van Ginkel when it comes to stunts and everything like that, because I think that's where he could really impact this team. Now, you look at his stats from 2020, again, an impact player right there. 48 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 10 QB hits, and 5.5 sacks. That is an impact player on the defense. And again, we don't know exactly what the injury is, and it might be minor, right? It could be minor, but he was limping off the field after the first padded practice, after he took a shot on the goal line. So going to be something to monitor moving forward when it comes to Andrew Van Ginkel. And again, if you love what you're seeing here on Chat Sports and you're a Miami Dolphins fan, I don't know if you haven't done it already, but you should. And that's subscribe. Hit that big red button below me, or go to youtube.com/Dolphins News. Again, I'm RC Maxfield. Shout out to producer Jeremy for producing the show today. And again, if you haven't already, hit that big red button below me if you want all that good quality Miami Dolphins news.